Throughout the year, we've been introducing you to the 6 essays that will appear on your AP Art History exam. In Unit 8, I introduced the Continuity and Change essay, but only to those of you who watched the play-posited extra credit video and or wrote the essay on the Palazzo Rucellai. That play-posited video on Continuity and Change is now the other part of your homework for today. In this unit, we are also introducing the Visual Analysis essay. This is a new essay format, which was included in the curriculum revised for 2021 and inflicted on students for the first time in May 2021. It's also the first short essay that will appear on your exam. But while the format is new, the skills required are familiar. Basically, this essay combines attribution, the ability to recognize an artist or culture or art historical period, with visual analysis and analysis of continuity and change. It's also an essay format that gives you, the writer, a lot of information. What you see on this slide is the College Board's description of the visual analysis essay. Note again that you will get an image, but it will be an image outside the required works list. Here is the visual analysis essay question that our students encountered in May of 2021. I did a happy dance when I first saw this question, both because I didn't think it was especially tough, but also because the ECB was giving me an excuse, not that I really needed one, to talk about works that I think are very important but don't show up on the list. Last year's students had all seen this work, and so have you. I have highlighted the verbs included in the question in red. The first of the 3 questions, worth 2 points, just ask you to use your eyes and put what you see into words, and you've all got that, right? The second part of the visual analysis question will focus on some particular element of the work that the ECB has chosen to highlight, and this will vary by work. Here the question is how the visual characteristics contribute to a sense of drama. Go for Baroque, or actually Hellenistic. But there are so many similarities, and you should find yourself using similar descriptive language and explanations. The third part of the visual analysis essay will ask about continuity and or change. Note that this 2021 question asks about change. How does this work depart from archaic or classical Greek sculpture? Conjure up a mental image of the Doryphorus, the spear bearer. You've got this. I'm about to show you the scoring guidelines for each part of this question. I'd really encourage you to pause and take notes in your workbook. Maybe even pause before you see the scoring guidelines to think about how you would answer. So, here you see the scoring guidelines for the first part of the question. Note that you don't have to remember anything about this work to come up with these descriptions. You just have to use your eyes and, whenever possible, deploy your art history vocabulary. So pay special attention to the careful choice of adjectives in these scoring guidelines. Flanked, serpentine, that means snake-like, anatomically realistic, flowing, naturalistic. Try hard to use this kind of language, which is both precise and descriptive, when you write your essays. And here are the scoring guidelines for Part 2, explaining how 2 visual characteristics contribute to a sense of drama. I'm struck by how many of these answers would also apply to Bernini's Ecstasy of St. Teresa or his Statue of David. We talked a lot in the last unit about techniques that Baroque artists used to give drama, dynamism, and movement to their works, including diagonal lines, twisted figures, and intensely emotional facial expressions. The trick to getting these points is to provide plenty of information and, again, to include informative, precise, descriptive language. Oh, and I forgot to say this with the previous slide, but you've heard it so many times before. If the ECB asks for 2 examples or 2 explanations, give them 3. Play it safe, and all together now, write more. So here are 3 non-required Bernini statues, more go for Baroque drama, similar to what we see in the Hellenistic sculpture assigned in this essay question. I've stuck that in the upper right. Here, finally, are the ECB scoring guidelines for the final part of the question. Note that most of these answers specifically reference Greek works by name. Continuity and change questions are always about comparison. Do not just talk about the work presented in the essay. And if you can compare the assigned work to a specific work from the College Board required works list, name that work and again be specific. So, I trust you remember these old friends, the Doryphorus and the Anabasis Kouros, from classical and archaic Greek art, respectively. Note that both show up in the scoring guidelines. But why are these two works not good comparisons for the last part of the visual analysis question? The question specifically asks for a comparison to, and even more specifically, a change from earlier Greek sculpture. The Winged Nike of Samothrace, like the Laocoon, is a Hellenistic work, and in fact it has a similar dramatic effect and uses many of the same techniques. Augustus of Prima Porta is clearly modeled on classical Greek sculpture, not Hellenistic Greek sculpture, but it's a Roman work, right? Always read the question very carefully. And now you get to practice, but in class. Canvas is going to randomly assign you a visual analysis essay on one of the two works I'm about to show you. Actually, one of them is here. Both of these questions are actual College Board questions from AP Classroom, so they will be graded with the scoring guidelines provided by the ECB. We're not going to give you the actual questions, so you're going to want to think about what features of these two works the College Board might have chosen to emphasize, to ask about. Note that you have already listened to lectures on both Enlightenment and neoclassical works. In fact, you just saw this work in my lecture on neoclassical art, and you saw this work in my lecture on the art of the Enlightenment. To sum up, remember, read the question carefully. Use descriptive, precise art history vocabulary whenever possible. If the question asks for one example, give two. If it asks for two explanations, give three. And, drum rolls, write more. Good luck.